Welcome to Soundbreaker. In today's episode, we're talking to Tom Stingemore, CEO and founder of Alloy Sync Distro. Thanks for joining us today. And for our listeners who might not be familiar with you, if you can give us a small introduction of yourself, your name, and well, we did introduce your name, so you could say it if you want to.
You said it very well, Bob. Thank you.
My
Yes,
pleasure.
I am Tom Stingemore. A little bit of a rewind for me. I was 7 years at Universal Records doing sync for all their labels. Then I spent 7 years at BMG doing sync for all of their artists and songwriters. And then I went to Hypnosis for 2.5 years to do sync for all of their songs. And now I have a new venture, which I'm sure we're going to talk about in due course.
Absolutely. Tom, I think you earned a title of working 7 and 2, so almost I would say about 16, 18 years working for labels doing sync. So either we could call you the doctor of sync or the professor of sync. So you gathered so much knowledge, you literally could write a book about it and or give a class. It's a you probably learned so much working for major labels. But before I want to get into that in a second. So obviously your passion, your love has been in the music business, and sync is, it's music. If you take us back in your early days, teenage, was it something that always that what I should say, what influenced you to kind of get you in that line of work, being involved in the music business? Was it something love for the music? Your parents, one of your parents, part of a band, or just listening to music, or influenced by?
Music was always a big thing, like a lot of people in households growing up. My dad was the Doors and the Stones and Squeeze, and my mum was anything from Bruce Springsteen through to Jennifer Rush, just everything across the board. But yeah, music's just always been, I think, my art form of choice. And that was from a very early age, and it's just happened. It's just followed through ever since.
So, shall we say your first job was at a major label and you dived into right away to sync, or you were? How did it all, evolve?
First job in the music business was at a major label at Universal Records. I went in as an intern, I'd guess you'd say, and then worked my way up from there. Really worked for an amazing guy called Mark Robinson, who is a great guy, a mentor and a friend and one of the greats. So I learned a lot of what I know from him in the early days.
Hmm. So basically, what started the whole thing is when you started working at Universal. So, if you can share with us your experience of working for 18 years and doing sync for major labels, obviously, which probably paved the path for you to start your own business and your own venture. Tell us how that 18 years working for with major labels shaped your passion for sync licensing that pushed you to open your own, platform.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. There's so many experiences and learnings along the way. I think I always joke that sync is like, it's an excellent part of the music industry to work on. I think let me think how to phrase this. Basically, the great thing about it is I've been able to work directly in music, which is my key driving force in life, and with many of the greatest artists and songwriters of all time. So that's obviously a huge privilege. But doing sync, you also get a window into the world of film, the world of TV, the world of advertising, the world of games. So it's a beautiful little sweet spot, really, creative and commercial, and I feel really privileged to have been able to do it for so long.
Amazing. I don't want to jump into it right away, but why not? The hell with it. This is a conversational discussion. Do you think, I see there's been influence, and I don't know how much influence of generative AI creating music for sync deals, whether it's a commercial or a movie or a show. There is people, video games that, it's a subject that maybe you can kind of shed some light on it. Because to me, what makes a great movie, what makes a great commercial? Sure, the idea, the visual idea, but also the music. You know, you notice a lot of people where they're watching a movie and the song comes up and really kind of the song shapes that scene even more. People get goosebumps because it touched certain emotions with them. And I think with AI, that's not going to happen. But again, please.
That's a big question. I think, where do I stand on this? I think that AI will obviously pose huge opportunities for artists, creators, visual entertainment, of all walks of life. I don't want to be like there's certain areas of the music industry that will have significant headwinds. I think obviously how that looks from a rights monetization point of view, I think have me on in a year or two and we'll be able to have a bit more meat on the bone. But I think I mean, from a sync point of view, there are areas of music that will have headwinds, but also I think that as generative video creation, AI will actually pose a huge opportunity, because if you think of the sheer volume of visual content that's coming down the road, like that is more, in my opinion, that is more opportunities for placements of artist
Mhm.
music.
Interesting. Can you tell us the current manual for the sync licensing process? Is it is it inadequate for today's visual content landscape?
So I don't know how familiar your listeners will be with the process that has always been used to clear or license commercial music, but essentially every use of music, be that on an advert, film, TV, game, karaoke game, mobile app, social branded content, whatever, they have to be cleared and approved individually in writing. And obviously it's not as simple as just needing approval from one person. Each piece of music generally has 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different companies attached to it, all of whom need to approve in writing. So it's definitely complex. It's famously, an undertaking. But I think the challenge has come. I mean, as famously complex as the process has always been, it was actually always fine. Like, people knew that it was complex, they allowed the time, and we all got it done as an industry. But what's happened in media and entertainment and content creation over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years is that those areas have just atomized and fragmented to the point where, brands used to make 1 or 2 adverts a year, so they were
Mhm.
happy to go undertake the music industry's sync licensing process every 6 months, but those same brands are not making 1 or 2 adverts any longer. They're making 200 or 300 pieces of branded content. So it quickly became unsustainable.
Mm-hmm. Unsustainable. Interesting. Um,
So just to clarify on that, like, traditional primary sync licensing, the industry, the high profile, high value opportunities, Netflix and Disney and Marvel and big commercials and big video games, like that will always remain the same. Like, you're always going to need people thrashing out deals and getting the artist on the phone with the producer and the creative and having creative calls. That will always be the same. But there is now, due to what's happened with media and entertainment and content creation atomizing to such an extent, there is now an ocean of content, visual content, branded or otherwise, for which there is no feasible way to license commercial music at the required scale. Yeah, there's essentially a vast ocean of unmonetized visual content existing in the world today, and that's before the robots start.
Tom, what drove you to pursue building an industry-wide sync licensing infrastructure? And what
Madness.
impact? Huh?
Madness.
Please, madness. And what impacted you? What impact do you hope to have on artists, songwriters, labels, and sync platforms?
Great question. Thank you. So, what drove me to do it? So, So first things first, I'm not claiming to have discovered a new problem, okay? People have been talking about this for a decade, that the way commercial music is licensed on a one-by-one individual, fully manual basis is not going to be entirely sustainable forevermore. So there are a number of people trying to solve this problem, but they've faced challenges. And I'll get into that actually in a second. What actually drove me to do it is that when I stepped out of my last role, I thought I knew what I was going to do, but then it quickly became apparent that by doing this thing, I could have a larger impact for artists and songwriters. So that's what started me on this journey. Now, as to the impact that I want to have for all artists and songwriters, is that I want their music to be easier for people to use. Because as we all know, as you alluded to in your intro, like a placement for a song on a piece of visual content can firstly provide revenue, but also provide exposure. But as it stands, it's for a lot of visual content, it's simply too difficult for people to actually use commercial music. And that, I think, is suboptimal for artists and songwriters. So that's what drove me to do it. I realized by doing this, I could have a bigger effect for artists and songwriters.
It's a good point. I mean, it's a good way to be inspired to start Alloy Sync Distro. And you added the word distro, which is distribution. Is that another service you provide?
Um, yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I guess we should probably talk about exactly what I'm building, and I think that would
Yes,
give a bit
please.
shed a bit more light on
Absolutely.
it.
Yes.
So, like I said just before, I am not claiming to have identified a new problem. People have been talking about this for approaching a decade. But what I realized when I stepped out of working for one music company is that we've all been trying to fix the same problem on our own in isolation while at the same time competing with one another. And that hasn't worked. So what I realized when I stepped out, I got this new impartial industry-wide vantage point, and I realized, we can't fix this on our own because music rights, okay? Because every song has 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 companies attached to it. So we cannot fix this on our own while competing with each other. So essentially what I've done, zooming out, is I've taken myself out of working for one music company to essentially volunteer myself as an independent, impartial music industry representative who is going to try and work to fix this for everyone.
I see. I see. By, can you tell us how exactly?
Sorry, that's actually how I started. Yeah. So, firstly, obviously, I've told you I'm setting up an impartial, independent music industry wide infrastructure.
Yeah.
What I'm building is actually the one missing piece of the puzzle, as I see it, to this whole marketplace. Okay. So I don't know how familiar you are with it, but essentially over the last 10 years, we've actually had approximately 10 to 15 what I call sync DSPs. So they are online consumer facing licensing shops where anyone in the world can go in and say, I'm making a commercial for my brand, and it's going to be on TikTok and Instagram for 30 days, and I want this song, here's my credit card. Okay, so sync DSPs. So if you say like the iTunes of Sync or the Spotify or the Deezer or the Tidal of Sync, whatever. The challenge is that although these companies who are all trying to work to fix the problem for artists and songwriters, none of them have really managed to get any significant level of commercial music into their platforms. So what I'm saying to the music industry is essentially, folks, we've got the shops, we've got the factory, we've got the shops, but we've got no road in between. And the missing piece of the puzzle essentially is data. So sync rights data. Every label and publisher manages, stores, accesses, updates their sync rights data at the moment in completely different ways, in completely different systems, in completely different locations. And that is, as I see it, one of arguably the main contributing factor to why the sync industry is still 100% manual. And that's what I want to correct.
Automate it. You want to make it easy. You want to make it more of a...
I definitely don't want to automate because it's, I mean, like I said before, like the traditional primary sync market as we know it, like it will always be the same. You're always going to want people like Disney are never going to want to put in a credit card for a $200,000 trailer, right? But what I'm fixing is the ocean of smaller uses for which there is currently no way for people to use commercial music in a meaningful, scalable way.
So you're saying if somebody, not to interrupt you, so let's say you want to kind of streamline it and simplify it because there's a lot of missing, it's not connected together. So you're saying, okay, let's say there is an independent filmmaker who doesn't have big budget. He cannot spend a lot of money on music. Barely his whole budget spent on the film, and he has a little bit of money to spend on the music. So he'll goes to one of the DSPs or comes to you. Actually, he'll go to you or goes to the sync DSPs.
So I will answer that in just a second. I just want to clarify one thing, right? Mm-hmm. So if you imagine the total sync market, okay? So you've got the record label or the music publisher. As music goes out to the world of licensing music into visual content, we have already, as an industry, monetized the traditional primary sync economy, which will always remain the same. That is 100% manual. Okay, mm-hmm. So that's Disney, Marvel, Nike, McDonald's, whatever. We've monetized that.
Yeah.
And that's 100% manual. Okay. At the other end of the spectrum, we've actually monetized the 100% automated licensing system, which is we give our whole catalog to TikTok, Peloton, Meta, YouTube, whatever, and say, do whatever you want and like use our music. Here's a deal for a whole catalog. So mm-hmm. On the one end of the spectrum, you've got 100% manual. On the other end of the spectrum, you've got 100% automated. However, in the middle, there is now a vast ocean of visual content being created, branded or otherwise, which has not been monetized by commercial music for two reasons. On the one hand, that ocean of visual content is too vast for our manual licensing process. And on the other hand, it is too nuanced for our 100% automated process. Okay, so it's falling in, commercial music is falling in between the gaps. So what we need to solve that and monetize that middle bit is a semi-automated licensing solution. So that's my terminology, right? It's not automated, it's semi-automated. And what I mean by that is it enables the music industry to turn on their catalog at scale while still retaining full control over how each song is or isn't licensed. Okay, so I'm putting control fully back in the hands of the labels and publishers and saying, folks, you can turn on your catalog, but still retain full control over how each song is and isn't used. So you choose your settings for every single song in your catalog, and then you turn it on because your approvals or your preferences have been set at the beginning of the process rather than where they sit at the moment, which is at the end of the process. So if you think, if anyone in the world as it stands finds one of our songs and says, I want to use this song, we as an industry make them embark on a potentially long and complex road. And at the end of that process, they get a yes, no, or maybe. Okay. So what I'm doing at a macro level is I'm taking the approval process from the end of the road to the beginning of the road, if that makes sense.
Yes. Very interesting, actually. It's I would say it's more organized and less headache. So a person in the beginning, they would know what criteria comes in with that song or what is it available for and what type of, what they need to be prepared if they're interested in that particular song. But a lot of manual work on the label to into this whole catalog and kind of turn on whatever, turn on whatever rights and they wish to give.
So
Correct?
I'm really glad you raised that actually. Yes. So that is not an uncommon topic raised by the
Yes.
labels and publishers. My thoughts on that are as follows. So number one, yes, there is a day one responsibility upon the labels and publishers as the rights holders to choose their settings and input their settings and their preferences.
Correct.
But I'm sure when Spotify launched, there was a little bit of manual data cleanup that had to happen on behalf of the
Always.
labels to turn it on.
Yes.
And thirdly, what's the alternative? We're all currently drowning in manual paperwork, and the customers actually are going elsewhere now. Like sync for commercial music, from all the numbers I've seen this year, is cooling off. Let's just say that. So that's the alternative. And also is like zooming out, like this is at the moment, if someone approaches a label and 4 publishers saying, I'm making a meat advert, can we make this song? Those 5 companies then all need to manually find out if it's available from scratch every single time, right? So it's a deeply manual process. But this system, although it's a day one responsibility to choose your settings, it is a one-time set it and forget it system, right? So yes, you have to
Correct.
choose your preferences, but you do it once.
Yes. True. Absolutely. Very smart. Now you will collaborate with artists, songwriters, sync platforms, or you call them the DSPs of sync, and record labels, publishers, correct?
Yeah, essentially this is like
I mean, Alloy
the
Sync will
reason I
open the doors for all of these.
yeah, I mean, this is, and I'm just thinking of the best way to word it because I'm trying to tie it back to your question, why have you got distro in the title, right?
Yes.
So Alloy is not a consumer-facing sync licensing platform. Okay, it's
It's not
obviously not a
B2C,
label. It's
B2B.
obviously not, exactly. It's obviously not a label or publisher either, right? It's actually just a centralized hub for standardized sync metadata, that sync rights information, which has never been standardized by the industry. So that's the best way to term it. It is a distributor, but for sync rights. So every label and publisher has their own private secure portal where they only see their own catalog and they choose the settings. Then they turn on their catalog for the sync DSP or sync DSPs that they want to be able to use their catalog. And just like, so when you're releasing a single, okay, you don't call up Spotify and say, can you put my song on? And then call up Deezer and say, can you put my song on? And then call up Apple Music, right? You put it into a distributor and then you say, I want my song on Spotify, I want my song on Deezer, I want my song on Tidal. So it's a distributor, but not for audio and artwork and WAVs. It's a distributor for sync rights. And that I'm not competing with anyone currently in the marketplace. I'm actually building this to finally enable this whole marketplace to not
I
only
think you're the
operate.
only one doing it. There's no system like this. You're the only one. You saw the problem. You worked in this industry for so long. And so you saw the flaws in the business. You saw where is it wrong or what is it missing.
Well, I think it's the missing piece of the puzzle, definitely.
But that's a massive infrastructure you're building. It's all data. That's a very big infrastructure.
I mean,
Now I'm
yeah,
thinking about it. It's like a big major warehouse you have. And you have enter the customers who's going to deliver, which is the record labels and publishers. And on the way out, only the sync DSPs. So you're not dealing with consumers. You're only dealing with rights holders to provide with, catalog rights holders, whether they are small labels or large labels, or I would say publishers who have the rights, who have the catalogs, and they have the data. They have to put it in, turn on whatever rights they want to give away and all of that. And the other side, you'll give the separate portal to the sync DSPs, where they have access to that so they can put it in their system and monetize on it for independent filmmakers, people wanting to make commercials, whatever.
yeah. I mean, I was speaking to someone a couple of weeks ago, and they said, "Tom, I love it. I always encourage people who want to help build something for the music industry is don't focus on the big, shiny, glamorous showbiz type stuff. Focus on unsexy tech. And he said, what you're building is unsexy tech. And I said, no offense taken. But like, I didn't set out to build this. It's almost like I realized this is the missing piece of the puzzle. The more time I did some sketches, worked some stuff up, I did a deck. The more people I spoke to, the more it rapidly gain traction. So it was more like I didn't sit down with a pad of paper and say, right, how can I be an entrepreneur? It was more the problem and the solution that found me. And now, I found myself making it.
And are you a data science engineer? I mean, no. Huh?
No. I've built systems and I've built dashboards and back end, music rights specifically with the sync in the sync area is sort of, that's my bread and butter. So I have built systems for that area. But this is definitely, a step up from that. But we've built it and it works. So it's quite exciting for artists and songwriters. Because I think again, you asked why am I doing this? What drives me is that it's really that I've seen that increasingly artists and songwriters are operating at a distinct disadvantage in the global sync marketplace. And what I mean by that is if there are thousands of cases a day where someone making a piece of visual content finds one of our songs, thinks this would be incredible, I want to use it. Oh, it's commercial music. I just don't have the time or headspace to do it, right? So we as an industry, and by the way, I take full responsibility. I've been doing this for, a long while. We've inadvertently put distance between our artists and the people who want to use their music and pay them money. So that is a distance that I want to reduce because I think, there's alternatives now, right, to commercial music. Like commercial music used to be the only shop in town. Commercial music is not the only shop in town. And my main mission is that I don't want commercial music to compete with utility music on price. However, in terms of ease of access and speed of licensing, I think our artists and songwriters are entitled to a level playing field. So that is, I guess, my main mission. If
is the whole infrastructure built, or it's still being built? How far are you?
Where are we at? So we are on the roadmap is to have this thing live and operational by the end of the year. That'll be phase one of the platform. So it's not going to look gorgeous yet, but it's going to be a highly robust, highly scalable data pipe, essentially. And we're on track to do that. Obviously, we're not 100% built yet, but what we're doing at the moment is we've built it to a point where we can now ingest vast data sets from labels and publishers. I've got half of the world's biggest music companies giving me their catalogs or bits of their catalog for the test phase. We're now demoing that platform to those labels and publishers, issuing them with logins so they can go and test the system and kick the tires on it. We're giving them a bit of a window to be able to say, Tom, we need a box for this or a box for that, because I'm building this with the music industry for the music industry, right?
Yes.
And then when all of the labels and publishers are happy, we're then going to bring on a handful of the sync DSPs to essentially test the data outside. And when they're all happy, we turn it on.
Amazing. I mean, just to kind of get into the other side of it. So you decided to create your own startup based on an issue and a problem that you saw. And it's like, hey, you know what? This is a big flaw and I'm going to fix it. Great. Now, are you doing this by yourself? Are you funding it by yourself? I mean, obviously you need a development team or one developer, or I don't know how many you're using to build the whole tech infrastructure for it. So you bootstrapping it yourself? You're financing everything on your own?
Yeah, the euphemism is bootstrapping. I funded it all myself at the moment. On the team, there
My
are
man.
two of us. I'm not the tech guy, as you might have guessed. I'm the sync licensing industry media
I'm gonna call
person.
you the sync licensing guru.
It's
You
been
earned it.
upgraded from doctor. It's gone up from doctor. So yeah, your words, not mine. Um, but so yeah, we funded it all ourselves at the moment. We are, as you asked, we're actually now halfway through a funding round, which is going to basically give us the pot of cash to finish the build ahead of the end of the year and get this thing live
Amazing,
in operation.
amazing. And so you have a partner, you're saying? So that you're not the only founder, or you have a co-founder with you, or only you?
Two of us.
Two of you. Well, let me tell you something. This is pretty interesting. I wanted it to be also for our listeners and viewers, but I'm actually intrigued by it that you thought of something like this where you saw the problem, and I don't know. I wouldn't know. I would not know. I would not know. But it's really pretty impressive. Pretty impressive.
Thank you,
Um,
Bob. No, and
yes. Yes.
I've, I've actually I've realized this is the missing piece of the puzzle we all need. And
Yeah.
from that moment on, I've been working to make this thing a no-brainer for labels and publishers, and artists and songwriters, and actually sync platforms. So that's been, I want to just fix this issue because we've all been, the whole music industry has been talking about it for a decade and no one's managed to actually fix it yet. So that's why I've sort of volunteered myself to build this thing. But no, thank you.
Wow. Alloy Sync Distro, is it .com or .com?
It's old school.com. Yeah.
Hey, it's
The
okay.
website,
I know a lot of
the
people
website.
put .ai right now, but Alloy's cool. School. You got me. Alloy Sync Distro.com will be available by the end of the year. It's something definitely to look forward to. Sorry, you were going to say something.
No, I was just going to say the website at the moment, like it's coming. It's the real thing we're focusing all our attention on is building the
Mm,
back end underlying infrastructure pipe work. So go and check out the website, sign up for the mailing list. We've got an email address. Feel free to hit us up there, join the waiting list. I think it's a good one. And by the way, I'm building this not only for the big majors, I'm building this for indies, smaller labels, smaller publishers. So like we've had to just a few weeks ago, like close the window for new applications of labels and publishers to come on, just because we need to focus on actually building the pipe work and laying the cables. But hit us up, follow, sign up for the mailing list. You'll get all the info on there, and stay tuned because we're building this for all commercial music.
wonderful. I'm sure I'm intrigued. I know that. And I'm sure our listeners and viewers
Thanks, Bob.
intrigued. And whoever own catalogs and have labels, please, you know where to go to, Alloy Sync Distro. Absolutely. Go online and fill the application. I guess there's a waiting list, so you would have to wait a bit till the doors open up to everybody. Any interesting or success stories that I'm sure quite a few of them, but something you'd like to share with us throughout your life in the sync business that you would like to share with our viewers and listeners?
Do you know what? I feel so privileged to have been in the major label, major publishing world for so many years, and have worked
Yeah.
with and met so many of my idols, heroes, music icons. But yeah, I think I couldn't say one thing in my previous roles, but every single placement that you land, every deal that you close, like, is a thrill and a huge privilege. I think in terms of the last 6 to 9 months, the biggest achievements really has been just managing to bring so many people in the music industry on board with this mission. We're not there yet. We've still got a lot of work to do, but thankfully everyone realizes now that we can do this.
Amazing. Any advice you have for our listeners and viewers who's going to be inspired by your story and they say, you know what, I want to carve my own way in the business and build my own thing? Tom is doing it. I could do it, because you're going to inspire a lot of people. Look, you worked for major labels for 18 years, and later on you said, you know what, there's a problem, but I'm going to do it. So obviously you still have that entrepreneurial mindset where you didn't want to just work for some more years and retire. It's like, no, I'm going to take on another challenge in my life. I want to build something that's going to actually benefit, our artists, our record labels, publishers. I want to do something that's going to help and advance the business, the music industry. So you actually took on a big challenge. So you do need to have that entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah, in terms of advice, good question. Do you know what? I just think, look, I've been doing this for 20 years now, and I've, always wanted to start my own thing in some capacity, but I, never quite knew what it was. So it was actually like this thing almost came to me. But broader advice, I would say, just work hard, be nice, treat every interaction you have in the music industry as an interview. Like, you never know where people are going to go on to and where people are going to turn up again. So just like, be cool, work hard, be nice to deal with, and believe in yourself. And I think as long as you have if you are in this thing for the right reasons, which is artists, songwriters, creative music, like that, let that be your guiding principle, I guess.
Absolutely. Great advice. Absolutely. Before we wrap it up, and I'll mention it again, I guess, I usually I'll say anything upcoming, but we know what's coming this year. We definitely know what's coming. Alloy, yes, Alloy Sync Distro. Hopefully by the end of the year, it should be up and running for everybody to come in. And it should really reshape the whole sync industry as far as metadata information and more accessibility to a lot of music out there to make it more available. Because as you mentioned, you said there's so much visual content available, but the commercial music hasn't even reached that part of it. So you're going to make that easier. And you build that bridge.
If you'll allow me one more sentence, I think.
Oh, please. Absolutely. This is it's your time, my friend.
One thing, so it's pretty clear now there is already an ocean of visual content being created today for which there is no way for commercial music to be licensed using the existing system. But that ocean of unmonetized content is going to be dwarfed when the robots kick in and video generative AI, when all of that visual content starts coming. So not only are we aiming to fix the problem today, we're also working to future-proof the global sync industry in preparation for yet more historic change.
Amazing. Wow. Yes, it definitely needed. Definitely needed. Definitely. Well, great interview, I have to say. Very informative. You're bringing something new to the industry. So for Soundbreaker to have somebody who is bringing something innovative and again, to make things better for the music industry that we're in, it's always welcome. I love it. And I'm sure for our listeners and viewers will appreciate this. Well, I want to thank you for joining us today, Tom. It's been a great interview, extremely insightful. And this includes today's episode on Soundbreaker. Please make sure to follow us on socials and stay tuned for our next episode. Thank you very much. See ya. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to share the Soundbreaker podcast. And if you are joining us on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Until next time.